Hello and welcome to the November NMSS tournament. This one is a bit of a standard departure in that spinners and overlapping are completely disallowed, and that kind of forces some design changes, but I did allow asteroid thrusters back in. So we're going to see exactly what kind of toxicity that brings into the field. In this first pool, we actually have more first and second time competitors than there are spaces in the pool, and I didn't want to extend the pool any further. So unfortunately one of our second time competitors got shoved into one of the standard pools. But no, Miku Symphony is not in Discord as far as I'm aware. What's really interesting is I think Miku Symphony, the ASD, Quan, and Fgd are all from our Chinese community. Debris is here with us. Terrabot, I know I've seen on Discord. Meowskersaures, I have no idea. That was just a fleet that I received. But let's go ahead and get this first pool going. Up first we have the ASD versus Quan. Now, the ASD, you can see, has built a few of these rather large but still relatively ornate bricks, an abundance of torpedoes, railguns, and plasmas, and because they're all off-center, as the ship takes damage, the target in a dual type of environment would drill down the center of this ship and leave all of this ship's armament intact, and I think that's what the ASD is going for. Meanwhile, Quan is going with a pretty standard tank and spank, where he's got a bunch of rockets and torpedoes, or rockets and missiles on those, and a couple of torpedoes, but mostly rockets and missiles. This guy, plasmas, torpedoes, you know, whole lot of projectiles being thrown around. But let's see how this goes. I'm feeling like Quan is probably at a disadvantage here, if only because of the sheer mass of ships that he's up against. But Quan is bringing a lot of torpedoes to the field, which torpedoes are game changers in most respects. But with the tank for Quan being taken apart by one of the ASD's ships, that I don't think that bodes terribly well for his fleet. These little guys, if the AI behaves correctly, will have no problem outmaneuvering these bricks from the ASD. But that puts a lot of faith in the AI. And yeah, these giant bricks of health with the asteroid thrusters are very quick. It's one of the reasons that I normally have them banned, is asteroid thrusters just allow Terrans to be too big. It kind of removes some of the identity of the other factions when Terrans can be more versatile and larger, while also being faster and having more health. Yeah, the big bricks out of the ASD are lacking any reverse, but they may not need it depending on what the AI decides to do. It's got plenty of ability to turn, so as long as it doesn't get an opponent directly behind it, it should be okay. But I'm feeling like round one is going to go to the ASD on points. And speaking of opponents getting directly behind it, as if to specifically make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. I do like these kiters out of Quan's fleet, though. They are rather nicely designed, and I've mentioned it before, but the tails sticking off the back of them is to move the center of mass of the ships more often than not. Although on these designs it might also serve for border protection. As they back into the border, because they have that tail sticking out, they won't just butt up against the back and have no idea what to do. They'll always be forced to turn some direction. and Quan wins round 1. A lot of damage output from those little kaijus. Missiles, torpedoes, and rockets, the interesting thing about them is that they're all really good sources of damage. Rockets and torpedoes are some of the most efficient damage output that you can get in the game. And the missiles, of course, home in on their targets, and against something like these ships from ASD, the missiles are going to have no problem hitting basically any time. ASD ships are a little light on the point defense. You can see the plasma cannons swirling, trying to shoot down incoming missiles, but there's too many missiles and the plasma cannons aren't terribly well suited to the job. There are a few burst lasers, but you can only do so much against this kind of missile vomit. And Quan takes the match. Well done in his first showing. Up next we have Meowskersaures up against the ASD. Meowskersaures is it should have really loaded from the other side for full effect, but you can see he's got a couple of little railguns on each of these ships and a bunch of asteroid thrusters, and I think he's got some commentary that he'd like us to all know. But let's see how his ships perform against these tanks. You can see that Meowskersaurus' ships are just as large as ASD's, but of course have very low damage output by comparison. However, Meowskersaurus is fielding 32 ships in this fleet. Meowskersaurus is also only using about 13,500 P instead of using the full allotment, which may or may not work out in his favor. On the plus side, it does mean that if he can score 14,000 points, the only way his opponent can win is elimination. But with the payload that his ships are carrying, I don't know that he's going to be able to secure much in the way of wins. And there we can start to see the commentary rotate around. Yeah, the Terran railguns are kind of in a weird spot. They have really good alpha, and they're turreted in long range, which is nice. But their rate of fire and projectile velocity is low enough that I feel like they don't do their job particularly well. And on top of that, they're rather expensive. I feel like they're largely just outclassed by torpedoes and some extra thrusters for maneuverability. You can see the torpedo volleys from the ASD just cleaving through these ships. Torpedoes are not a weapon to be trifled with. I think it's going to be going to time in every round, but I think we're going to see ASD take it. The stream is partly mature because of that, but largely it's because every once in a while I decide to say bad words, and I don't feel like getting flagged by Twitch for it. And it's a lot easier just to flag all the streams as mature. That way I don't forget later. I think Meowskersaures' main goal was not so much trying to take advantage of the competitive environment as generating some conversational discourse. Yeah, Splinter's fleet was the last one received. Yes. But yeah, moving in around 2, I can't imagine this one's going to go a whole lot different. Those railguns eventually will be able to dig through stuff and kill thrusters and break armor blocks, but I don't think there's enough logistics to get enough railguns on target to actually get anywhere. Yeah. Meowskersaures is working on layers here. I mean, railguns are not a terribly popular weapon. His thrust is asymmetrical. The very design itself is asymmetrical. If it loads in on the wrong side, the words aren't even readable. Maximum triggering potential. I like it. Yeah, they may actually trigger the disrespect behavior. I think each one of those ships is only worth about 350 or so. They're pretty inexpensive. And the ASD wins. Up next we have Terrabot up against the ASD. Terrabot is using several little designs here. These guys have a couple of plasmas and some missile launchers. Actually, maybe railguns. I can't really tell. It's too bright. But he's got this guy here, which has some mortars on the back and some of the bigger guns in the middle. Overall, though, Terrabot's relying quite a bit on shields, which historically hasn't proven terribly effective. but we'll see how this goes. And you can see right away those little guys rushing and it not going so great for them. The giant bricks from the ASD are more than capable of taking some collision damage from a bunch of tiny craft. Yeah, I do like the look of Terrabot's fleet, but I don't know that it has an answer for the things that ASD brought here. Alright, we're not gonna watch that. There's no way. But going in round 2, you can see the same thing happening again. I think a lot of what we're seeing is that the AI is determining that it cannot safely deal damage to these things from outside their own weapon range, and so it's getting as close as possible to ensure that it hits, and that's why all the little guys are suiciding, which of course is a terrible decision. But it is one that the AI made. And ASD takes the match. So up next we've got Deathmaster by Miku Symphony. I'm not actually sure if this is the name Miku Symphony wanted. This fleet was a resubmit, and the original fleet was named Deathmaster, but it was a completely different design. And when Miku Symphony resubmitted, they forgot to include a name. So I just kind of grabbed the name from their previous submission, and so if that's not the name they wanted, then I apologize, but you'll have to deal, I guess. A lot of really interesting designs in this one. This thing kind of looks a little bit like a spider with the plasma or bolts and the annihilators in there. Good weapons all around. That's an obliterator in the middle, which obliterators are pretty devastating when they work well and pretty laughably ineffective when they don't. It has 3 of the obliterator craft, and then this guy, which is a giant spongy mess with plenty of cannons. Overall, Miku Symphony's fleet I think is going to be a lot more durable than it would appear to be, but I don't think it's going to have the durability or the damage to deal with what ASD brought. The asteroid thrusters just allow entirely too large of Terran craft on the field. And no, 12 was the limit of melee blocks. And it does look like one of ASD's ships got magically dead. See, the core is, yeah, back in that area somewhere. Obliterators, one of the things they can do is sometimes they'll just magically punch through armor and do a bunch of damage to things. And I did not see what happened to the other ship, but I'm assuming it was magic obliterator penetration. But even still, you can see ASD has clawed back the point discrepancy. And one good volley from those torpedoes. Yeah, there we go. Now you can see it doing some damage. Torpedoes are probably one of the most popular Terran weapons, and for very good reason. Miku Symphony holding on rather well, but I fear that the ASD's got round 1. Or no, Miku Symphony magically obliterated. So Miku Symphony took round 1. Yeah, the Obliterator magic is an unreliable sort of wizardry, but when it works, it feels so good, so wrong at the same time. Yeah. Just get in there and destroy. Smaller melee blocks are the same level of damage as the larger melee blocks, but they have less health, and so they tend to be more easily destroyed. I think the smaller ones are also more expensive than the larger ones. Sentinel armor is really weird. And yeah, round 2 is definitely looking like it's going in favor of ASD's fleet. Obliterator magic is very powerful when it works, but if you rely on it and then it doesn't work, then this is kind of what happens. And moving in round 3, looks like Obliterator magic took out one of ASD's ships. And you can see it fired from the front of the ship and somehow magically destroyed the core and the back of the ship, which is one of the many things Obliterators do that they shouldn't be able to. They can also punch through shields without damaging the shield. They'll just kill they'll explode where the shield is instead of on the edge of the shield. Something like that. Obliterator magic is weird and a problem. But ASD's ship does not want to relent, and I can appreciate that. Doing a very good job of holding on by itself, and slowly but surely taking ships out. Building up a rather solid point lead, as it does, too. And as mentioned in the chat, if you want to resist Obliterator magic, the best tool you can really have is to put some spaces in your armor. I don't know that anyone is 100% sure why, but it has to do with how collision detection works with the width of the laser. And if you want to create your own Obliterator magic and mods, just make sure your lasers are, I think, yeah, Darkwing Demon says it's 6, which sounds about right. And nukes are banned largely because the AI has no idea how to deal with them. They, in addition to instantly popping most things, explosions in general aren't handled correctly by shields. So any damage that would be absorbed by the shield in an explosion doesn't apply if the shield goes down. So the ASD takes that match. So up next we have Debris up against the ASD. And you can see Debris rehashing his old design with some new modifications, but a lot of this is very similar to the fleet we saw last month. The blockers, the battleship, very similar design. But let's see how it pans out. The battleship is going to have a lot of damage, but the ASD's torpedo volleys are going to be very terrifying. But the as I was saying though, any damage that is absorbed by the shield passes through if the shield is killed by it. So if a shield has 200, or if a shield has 500 health, and you hit it with a torpedo, which does 500 damage, it will down the shield and then do 500 damage to everything under the radius, as though the shield was never there. The problem with nukes is that they have like a 600 radius and do 1,000 damage. So there's only 2 factions in the game, or well, 3 factions in the game, but 2 factions realistically that have shields that can even resist that kind of damage. And any faction that doesn't have shields just gets shredded by it because it's just unreasonable. The radius is so large that most point defense weapons can't kill it before it blows up and destroys half the ship. But back to the matter at hand, you can see Debris' battleship has already killed one of ASD's ships, while the other one seems very distracted. And you can see a few condenser shots coming in from the bottom of the screen. I'm thinking the battleship is... it kind of got stuck, but Debris did manage to take round 1. And round 2, the spawning positions look rather good for Debris in this one as well, with his battleship kind of being in the back. The distractors have a decent amount of firepower themselves, but their main job is just to tie the enemy up. And so for that, Debris kind of wants his distractors to be in the front at spawn. That way his battleship, which is considerably less heavily armored, will have the ability to actually apply all of its damage. And that's kind of what we're seeing, but at the same time some of those distractors seem to be a little bit struggling. But you can see each of those large condensers I think does 2,000 damage per second, which is an utter ton of damage output. And you can see it just tearing through all of this armor. I do like the crystalline condensers. And one of the large ships down for Debris, but Debris' fleet running very low on distractors at this point. The additional maneuvering thrusters do seem to be helping out quite a bit for Debris' fleet, as you see the one distractor was kind of facing sideways and has reoriented itself. This could be a problem though. Those torpedoes are going to clean up. And this is more or less exactly what the ASD's ships are designed for. You can see that the condensers are digging through the center of the craft, but it doesn't really matter because there's nothing important there. All of it is just blocks of armor. Meanwhile, the ship from Debris just kind of sat back trying to shoot, but ending up just fizzling in space. Might also be struggling in this round as well, as you can see the torpedo volleys destroying the large, well, not quite dead yet, there it is, So with the battleship down for debris, I don't know that he's going to have enough damage on the field at this point to take the match away from ASD. And I'm glad you guys are appreciating the ships mod. I don't know why it took so long to think about doing that, but putting that together was relatively straightforward. Just had to go actually collect all the ships. And the ASD wins the match. And next we have the ASD up against FGD. FGD is using a pair of these. I believe they're identical. Yeah. They're very fast, very shielded, lots of long-range weaponry. You can see railguns and missiles with more than enough of both. Actually, I think I missed some overlapping on this. Whoops. But let's see how these guys handle. They are apparently being very disrespectful, and that will favor ASD's fleet very heavily. Yeah, basically. FGD's ship's actually holding up rather well, though. I think a lot of it has to do with them having been able to avoid the torpedo volleys, though. The majority of the damage we've seen inflicted by ASD's fleet has come from the torpedoes, which fast-moving ships tend to do a pretty good job of avoiding. And FGD's ships looked a little too brave early on, but they're doing a much better job now. You can see them kind of dancing in and out of weapons range. Though ASD does still have a decent little point lead, and we're running out of time. FGD's fleet has a lot of range and a lot of speed, but overall their damage is a little on the low end, especially if they're going to take a couple of torpedo matches like that. And right down to the wire, but ASD did take round one. I think there was less than a 100-point difference between the two, though. So this one could still very much go either way. It all hinges on whether or not FGD's ships get a little disrespectful. And FGD's ships, I don't know that they have enough damage output to kill ASDs. It's going to be point matches. But it is worth noting that this time they decided not to rush in and headbutt the giant bricks. A little bit of hand holding there, but FGD's ships escaping rather quickly. The speed is obviously one of their best assets, but the problem with fast moving ships is that they are very much subject to what the AI decides to do. Big armor bricks like these are fairly reliable because you know it doesn't really matter a whole lot what the AI decides to do as long as the AI decides to engage the enemy. And yeah, you can hear El Doggo in the background. He appears to have discovered that his toys have squeakers in them. You don't have to spam missiles or drones. One missile launcher will accomplish the same task of preventing regeneration as a railgun, but it'll do it for less investment. It's not really cheese. But moving into round 3, I do still think the ASD has the advantage, mostly because in a 2.5 minute match, there's a lot of time for the AI to make interesting choices. And it only has to make one mistake for ASD to build up enough point lead to carry him through the match. And there we just saw several hundred points being scored as torpedoes managed to catch one of FGD's ships. Which by all rights, they should never get hit by torpedoes. They are much faster than the torpedo. But yet here we are. But FGD's ships are behaving pretty well so far, and building up a pretty hefty lead. And as long as ASD's ships just sit here and spin in place, they're probably not going to be able to do anything useful. And FGD takes the match. So next up we have Quan up against Meowskersaures. And Quan's fleet, we saw last time, this large kiter was able to take out ASD's ships, which leads me to believe it'll be able to take out some of Meowskersaures as well, but I don't know how many exactly. We'll see. Meowskersaures has had every round go to points so far, and I don't imagine this will be a whole lot different. Let's see if speeding up even works. Yeah, speeding up is having no real effect. And this time around, I believe there were 26 submissions. Come to the dark side, we have spinners. And not just spinners, but hyperstacked spinners. And with 30 seconds on the clock, I'm thinking we're going to see round 1 go in favor of Quan. Meowskersaures' reliance on railguns does not seem to be a competitive advantage. I prefer to view everything through the competitive lens. It gives a simple way of saying which is better, A or B. And Quan takes round 1. And yeah, I'm pretty sure the railguns were just there to get it past the balance rule. The fleet originally had to be resubmitted because he used 38 of these in order to get to the 16k budget. And then instead of changing the ships at all, Meowskersaures just removed some of them and submitted it as a 14k fleet instead and called it a day. Something tells me Meowskersaures isn't here to win. Just here to make a statement. Now, if only we knew what that statement was supposed to be. I think Subpool's onto something. I think if we focus, we can decode this message. I believe in the power of teamwork. I feel like there's... So I know I sent basically the most cancerous fleet I could imagine through the wormhole. And I'm wondering if Meowskersaures encountered that and decided to submit this fleet as a result. Yeah, Braided, have you seen the fleet I sent through the wormhole? Because if not, go check the wormhole and look at my Steam name. It's the picture with the little cat. It's an old cat image macro. But I highly recommend taking a look at that fleet. It is the worst thing in the world. Yes. It's a bunch of multi-faction ships. Snot guns galore. It's like the dumbest shit in the world. And Quan takes the match. So up next we have Quan up against Terrabot. Last time we saw Terrabot's smaller guys have some decision-making problems when dealing with the large ships out of ASD. I'm thinking they'll probably have the same problems with Quan's tank, but you can see Quan's kiters are also cleaning up pretty quickly. The abundance of missiles out of Quan's fleet missiles track even fast-moving targets rather well, and it's proving very difficult for Terrabot's fleet. This round doesn't seem to have gone too well for him, and I don't know that the next one's going to go a whole lot better. And no, floof. Debris is also crystalline. And you can see once those shields go down, the ships fall apart very quickly. And that's the problem with relying on shields. But next we have Miku Symphony up against Quan. Miku Symphony managed to get some magic obliterator kills in the prior match. But you can see with the way that Quan's trapper is spaced, I don't think the magic obliterator kills are anywhere near as likely to happen. But you can kind of see how the obliterator seems to draw the laser sometimes through the ship, even though it's hitting blocks. Obliterators behave very strangely. And I don't think we have any farmers. Round 1 going in favor of Quan. And I expect round 2 will probably be pretty similar. The trapper being far more resistant to obliterator magic is going to be a problem for Miku's fleet here. Though one of the obliterators does manage to take out Quan's kiter, which that is one of the advantages to using obliterators, because they're lasers and relatively long ranged ones at that. They do a very good job of taking out kiting ships. But they're also super expensive, which is one of their big problems. And next up we have Quan up against Debris. This one may be a bit of a struggle for Debris. Crystalline have always kind of struggled with faster ships, and as long as the trapper doesn't trap friendlies, I don't know that Debris is going to have an answer for the kiters. Although, creative AI decision making can always alter plans. Yeah, the battleship is trying to single-handedly deal with all of the kiters, which is not going overly well for the battleship. Terran missiles are something of a nightmare. And the kiters are also using a fair number of rockets and torpedoes as well, which rockets I think are probably the fastest moving missile in the game. And looks like Quan should be taking round 1. Floof, you are in the last pool and you are with Splinter, yes. I think part of the reason we're seeing more competitive first pools is that some of the Chinese players are hopping the pond, and they're veterans in their own community, but I'm putting them in the first pool because that was the rule I laid down, is whether or not you had appeared in NMSS tournaments. Like FGD, I'm guessing Quan, and ASD have all been competing before, but this was relatively new to them in the NMSS arena. So they're all in the neophyte pool. And Dalek, yes, you are in the second pool. Gotta get it up in there in the devil's anus. That's how you know. Hey Terrabot, you're in the first pool here. Yeah, Debris has the point lead for now, but I don't think that's going to hold up. I think Quan will be able to claw back the difference. Terrabot also kind of got surprised by ASD's fleet as well. Yeah, I don't think anyone's using more railguns than Meowskersaures. I think that's the real railgun Inquisition. But Quan takes the match. And next up we have Quan up against FGD. Last time we saw FGD do rather well, but a lot of it was owed to the fact that ASD was relying very heavily on torpedoes. If the Trapper does its job, and the Kiters do their jobs, then FGD may struggle, but FGD's fleet was remarkably reliable, or remarkably durable before. You can see him kind of just taking apart the Kiters. Round 1, I'm thinking, is all but over in favor of FGD. Let me see if I can get a picture of this real quick, so you guys can see what kind of stuff I have to deal with here. All I'm trying to do is play some reassembly. This little monster. I don't think there are any. I don't think there are any Tankrel in here. Yeah, I forget what Duke's fleet is. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's true. I double checked everything right at the beginning. Wonder if Splinter takes some sick pride in knowing that some of the rules exist specifically because of things that he did. And FGD takes the match. So up next we have Meowskersaures up against Terrabot. I feel like Terrabot will probably do rather well in this one. I don't know. He does have quite a bit of offensive firepower. As you can see, a significant volume of projectiles coming out of the larger ships from Terrabot's fleet. But now I think we can get back to decoding the message that Meowskersaures is trying to tell us. Yeah, Meowskersaures is making a statement, more so than anything else. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, Husk. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, I could see that. Little tickets from like raffles or or whatnot. Yep, Meowsker is only using about 14k of his budget. Honestly, I think his fleet would do very well if he dropped the railguns and brought 2 torpedoes and a missile launcher on each one. And maybe invested a little bit in some maneuver or some thrusters to turn. You're allowed to say whatever you want, and I'm allowed to ignore it. Yeah, I like Meowskersaures definitely is marching to the beat of his own drum here. But did take round one. Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if by the end of the tournament certain things were forgotten. The mature checkbox is already on, so if you want to say bad words or whatever, feel free. And it looks like Meowskersaures might just be taking round two as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Meowskersaures isn't making it out of the pool. Oh, hi, little guy. And it looks like Meowskersaures will be taking the match as well. Yeah, if they had factories, this would be like the trolliest troll fleet that ever did troll. But next up we have Meowskersaures up against Miku Symphony. The coded message, I think, is going to protect these ships a little bit, although we just had some obliterator magic right there. Let's see if we get any more obliterator magic in here. And we got some more obliterator magic there. I love a good old-fashioned core popping. But it does look like Meowskersaures is building up a lead in this match as well. I don't know, Jules. There's people that would do that just for fun. I don't know what you're complaining about. Also, Tinkerable generators might as well be their hull. Their armor is that bad. And Meowskersaures takes round 1. We did get some obliterator magic, but not enough to save the day. The downside to fighting a whole bunch of ships that are only like 400 P each is that even if they do get obliterator magic, it doesn't really matter. And yeah, I literally cannot speed these up. If I turn the speed up, nothing happens. Yeah, basically. Real man of genius. Did you hear him, Duke? And yeah, this is exactly why asteroid thrusters are banned. This shit right here. Yeah, little guy likes to breathe. That's weird. I keep telling him not to, but he keeps not listening. Dalek, in the last few months, people kept complaining because asteroid thrusters were banned, and things like, well, all my ships use asteroid thrusters, and I really like them. I don't think they're that bad. I don't see what the problem is. And I kept explaining it, and they kept saying, well, I don't know, I disagree. So here's the evidence. This is what happens when every rule that exists in the NMSS rule postings exists for a reason, including the ban on asteroid thrusters. Is what's stacked inside cargo containers. And Meowskersaures wins. So up next we have Meowskersaures up against Debris. With little luck, the battleship will be able to do battleship things. Condensers. Doing all the condenser stuff. I was gonna ask if we had Daleks in chat, but we actually do. I like the battleship just backing into the enemy instead of driving correctly. One of the advantages that the crystalline have over the other factions when dealing with stuff like this is that the crystalline plasma condensers have a range of 1800, whereas sentinel cannons have a range of 1500, and Terran plasma cannons have a range of 1400. Meaning that in situations where the other faction's projectiles would expire shortly before actually hitting anything, the crystalline condensers can still kill the target. On top of the fact that they just do a maddeningly high amount of damage. The big Terran plasma should be 1400. Yeah, reiterating the chat, any block that's destroyed no longer generates points. Armor used to just generate points regardless of whether or not it had been damaged before, but the end result was that the only things people had were tiny little kiters, and armor was useless because you lost every round on points. If you go watch some of the earlier NMSS videos, you'll see fleets in a 16k tourney scoring millions of points because of armor. And it looks like Debris will be taking round 1. And I'm thinking sometime in the next day or two we should see Debris take round 2 as well. I'm pretty sure the opposite of Ya is 9. Well, I guess both Flypaste and Mons don't know shit. It's a whole new kind of game. Do they have 1400 muzzle velocity or something? Because I definitely remember that number from somewhere. Mach schnell, wir haben keine Zeit. I like that depending on where you are in Eastern Europe, Tak has like 6 meanings. Okay, so the 1400 muzzle velocity is what I was remembering then. Dog, you're an idiot. Yeah. Somebody can't sit still, so they're about to fall off my lap because they also have no idea where their body is. So they don't know how to position themselves. So he just kind of like plops his head down on the leg, and then the rest of him just slides off because he's dumb. Yeah, he's got the rough life. Isn't that right, little guy? You people call me evil. And look what Splinter Man wants to do. But it does look like Debris will finally be taking the match. I think we've got Meowskersaures up next for another one. Yep, Meowskersaures versus FGD. And Meowskersaures off to a pretty strong early lead. The sheer hull of these finely tuned competitive vessels is slowly grinding FGD ships dead. the disrespectful behavior of the AI causing some significant problems. No, I think it's lost too many matches to go to champs. Yes, I believe so. I don't think FGD has the damage output to score enough points to get the lead back from Meowskersaures. And I don't think round 2 is going to go a whole lot different. The problem here is that the kiters from FGD are 8000p each, whereas the ships they're fighting are about 400. So the reassembly AI is just like, oh, well, a 400 ship is nothing for an 8000 ship, so I'm just going to drive in and kill it real quick. It doesn't even consider the possibility that a 400 point ship can have a lot of health. Alright, FGD wants to skip. So, up next we have Terrabot versus Miku. I think these obliterators are going to be a very big problem for Terrabot's fleet. The raw damage output of those things is actually rather solid. I'm not entirely sure it's worth the cost, but they will get results. I also really appreciate that Meowskersaures now has a diehard fan. And yeah, part of what you're paying for with the obliterators is the obliterator magic. But when you're in an environment that doesn't facilitate obliterator magic, it just doesn't feel like a good purchase. Yeah, unmitigated Terran drones are a serious problem. And you can see that the larger ship over here for Miku is just kind of like hanging out. It doesn't have reverse thrust, so it can't turn around. And as a result, it had no idea how to actually maneuver to engage the enemy. If it had gotten involved in the fight, we might be seeing a very different result, but I think round 1 is going to be going in favor of Terrabot. And Drills, when you say them, you mean the drones? And Terrabot off to a very strong round 2 as well. The only one obliterator still on the field, which the fact that Miku brought 3 obliterators means that's almost half of his budget right there. And that doesn't even account for anything else. So losing 2 of them outright is a very big loss. And yeah, the ships from Miku are a little bit on the small side, which is making them kind of fodder for all the mortars that Terrabot brought. But Terrabot finally getting a chance to show what it's made of and walks away with a win. And up next we have Terrabot against Debris. This, I feel, is going to be less in Terrabot's favor. There we go. Yeah. And about as I thought, Debris is taking round 1 rather substantially. Ship's caught in the bear grill. The extra hour already happened. That was last night. And yeah, I think Splinter Man is in love with Meow Meow. I think I may have messed up on this too. I'm thinking this guy actually doesn't have a weapon. I don't know, maybe he's got something on the front there? Yeah, I think I see a barrel. I'm not sure. And yeah, I think it makes decisions based on the blueprint's value, not the current ship's value. But next up we have Terrabot up against FGD. I feel like FGD is going to have the advantage here. The speed, the range, and the alpha are going to come in very handy. But as you see in chat, there was some disrespect, and disrespect does not do one any favors. Yeah, basically. The game lives to demonstrate just how much I don't know shit. This last kiter could probably pull it off, though. As long as it behaves. I say as it promptly stops behaving. But round 1 did go in favor of FGD after all. And yeah, FGD, I think he has like 6 shields on each of the kiters. Something like that. I remember when ships fought like bridge trolls. Just sat back and spewed vomit at each other all day. Oh, that's a good guy. That's a good boy. And up next we have Miku Symphony up against Debris. I feel like Debris has a pretty solid advantage here. The damage output of those condensers is going to make itself known again. But that said, it did just charge headfirst into a bunch of melee spikes, which I don't recommend doing. If the battleship goes down, then Debris might not be able to recover. And the battleship just went down. The score surprisingly even though. The distractors each have a missile and a condenser, so they're not helpless by any stretch of the imagination. Debris' main battleship kinda drove straight into a bunch of melee spikes and it didn't work out. Yeah, melee spikes are fine, you just can't build the tiny, like, 6-part rushers and call it a day. You have to actually commit. Melee is nerfed. This is with the tournament mod on. Melee spikes work fine. All the complainers can stop. Yeah, full glory melee spikes, the battleship would not have survived the initial contact, it would have died immediately. Full glory melee spikes are no joke. But it does look like Debris is still going to take round 1. It kinda does floof. The melee spikes also take damage whenever they deal damage, so eventually they break. The ships also lose momentum on contact, which kind of limits exactly how far they can drill through other ships. It's just normally the collision doesn't count enough to actually slow the melee ship down. But this time the battleship, you can see, is hiding behind the distractors where it's supposed to be, and things are going not so well for whatever happens to be in front of it, as tends to be the case. Braided, if you want them to more consistently melee, you have to not include guns. You can include a missile and it'll usually still be fine, but if you want it to actually consistently melee, then you can't use guns. Sentinel guns are terrible at point defense anyway. Like the plasma bolts are too... the projectiles are too slow and the rate of fire is too low for them to be any good at being point defense anyhow. And the battleship got Obliterator Magicked, followed by one of the kiters getting Obliterator Magicked. And it looks like Miku Symphony will be taking round 2. Look at all that Obliterator magic happening. Fair and balanced. But this formation is kind of what Debris wants as well. The battleship in the back. Hopefully this time it'll actually take out the Obliterator ships a little sooner. Yeah, fly paste. Like 4 ships got Obliterator Magicked in a row, including the battleship. It's like half of Debris' fleet got killed in like a 4-second span. I mean, the thing is, the Obliterator laser shouldn't penetrate. It's an explosive weapon. That would be like antimatter's penetrating. It doesn't make sense for it to penetrate at all. That's what the explosion is for. And it's not really penetrating to the next block, it's cutting halfway through a ship to kill stuff on the inside, specifically the core. It doesn't blow up all the other things, it just blows up the core. It's very clearly a bug that's been around for like 2 years. That I'm aware of, at least. It's probably been around longer than that. But Debris takes the match. And next up we have Miku Symphony up against Fgd. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fgd is going to take this one, although those obliterators are going to be a problem. Yeah, actually, those obliterators might just win this for Miku. Although this is less like obliterator magic and more like obliterators just actually doing what they're supposed to do. Relatively long-range lasers with explosive damage. That seemed a little bit like magic though, although it may have just got a generator. Yeah. Yeah, obliterators, I think a fully charged shot is like 2k damage, which punches through the shield anyway. But the minimum charge is still 1000 damage, somewhere in there. And now we've got Debris up against Fgd. If Debris takes this match, then we're going to have a tie for who gets into the champion pool. But I feel like FGD's got some advantages here. Mostly his ships seem to be respecting the kiters. And some anime does have a lot of really good storytelling. but some of it is just cheap cash-in garbage, like any other television. Taxes are magic. See, one of FGD's ships over here decided to hug one of the distractors, and it is not going well. That right there cost FGD the point lead here in the first match. Also, trip report, for the first time, my dog has managed to catch a thing that was thrown at his face. Just so you know. And Debris takes on 1. Yeah, as was pointed out in chat, the fact that Debris had 8,124 points and both of FGD's ships are worth 8,000 means that it got 8,000 points from killing one ship and 100 from the other. Alright, Jules, have a good night. Appreciate you joining us. Yeah, Jules is in the 3rd pool anyway, that's gonna be a while. And there are 4 pools, yeah, 26? Yeah, 26. Quite a few entries. So yeah, there'll be 4 sub pools, 8 in the champion pool. which I 100% completely managed to not mention before starting. You know. And you are in the 4th pool. I'm actually not entirely sure we're going to get to the 3rd, 4th, or champion pool tonight. I suspect I'll be needing a bit of a break before we're all done. But FGD takes round 2. Yeah, the early submit meta. Yeah, Clem, you're in the 2nd pool. It is currently driving in reverse. That appears to be what it's doing. Alright, have a good night, Odinson. Take it easy. I mean, what I could do is always just run the champion pool without streaming it. That way nobody's really sure who won, except for me. And everyone but you, because everyone but you is also me. Did you take a nap, Splinter? I do like a good nap. Probably with his eyes closed. Oh, that wasn't a dream, Splinter. We're in the champion pool now. FGD takes the match, which means FGD, ASD are tied, and Quan is moving on, and I need to figure out which of those two will make it. Alright, so thank you for joining us, and hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.